everybody, and welcome to Self-Help FAQ, the YouTube channel. I'm Barb, your host, and welcome to video 6 in the 12 video series we have on boundaries and all the subcategories of boundaries. In the last video, we talked about emotional regulation, not suppressing your feelings, but knowing how and when to handle them so you don't feel overwhelmed or exposed later. Today I want to talk about something people notice after the fact. You leave a conversation, you hang up the phone, you walk away from someone, and you feel exhausted, foggy, irritable, and strangely flat. And you think to yourself, why do I feel this way? I didn't do anything. So this video is about why certain people drain you, even when nothing obvious went on, and what's actually happening underneath. First, let's get this out of the way. Feeling drained after dealing with certain people is not a weakness. It's not oversensitivity or lack of emotional regulation. Often it's your own system reacting to some kind of unseen work that you're doing behind the scenes in your interactions with certain people. You're not imagining it. You're working quietly, and that work has a cost. So we call this doing emotional labor. And emotional labor really isn't about caring about people. It means managing the emotional environment so that things don't fall apart. This could be you doing things like monitoring someone's mood, choosing your words carefully, maybe softening your reactions, and doing reassuring, buffering, explaining, smoothing over. So you're not just talking, you're actually managing the interaction. And if you're doing that consistently with the same people, your energy will drain, even if the conversation seems fine. Some examples of this would be, and it's not really going to be dramatic, but this is kind of what it looks like. For instance, if you're trying to monitor someone's mood, they might say something to you like, "Oh, hey." And then inside of you would feel, okay, something's off. They sound annoyed. I should be careful. And then you might respond, "Hey, is this a bad time? We don't have to talk right now if you don't feel like it." So you haven't really even said what you called about yet, but you're really adjusting to their mood, and that's emotional labor. Second, let's talk about what you might do when you're choosing your words carefully. This is when you're editing yourself in real time to avoid a reaction. So what you really want to say is, hey, that actually really bothered me. But when you're carefully choosing your words, then instead you might say, I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking this, but I just wanted to mention something. So you're not lying, but you are padding the truth so that it lands softly. And that padding costs energy. Now, number 3, you could be softening your reactions. So this is when your actual reaction gets dialed down. So they might say something like, I forgot, I was busy. And then you feel disappointed, hurt, frustrated. And so then your reply might be, it's okay, I know you have had a lot going on. So notice what didn't happen. You didn't tell how you felt. You didn't ask for a repair. And you didn't pause. You just absorbed those feelings and you moved on. And that's emotional labor. And number 4 is reassuring them so that they don't feel bad. This one is very common. They might say, I hope you're not mad. But what's actually true is you are upset and you're still processing. So you say, no, it's fine, I get it. Now you're not just managing your feelings, you're managing theirs as well. And so now the conversation is about their comfort, not your experience. And so number 5 would be explaining instead of stating. This is where exhaustion really builds. What you could say is something like, I don't want to do that. But what you say instead is, it's not that I don't want to help. It's just that I've been really tired lately, and I've had a lot on my plate, and I don't want you to think I don't care. So you didn't state a boundary, you built a defense case. Explaining feels safer, but it takes far more energy than clarity. Number 6 is about smoothing and buffering the interaction. This is when you try to keep things emotionally even. They might say something like, wow, okay, and then you immediately might say, I didn't mean it like that. I'm not upset. I just thought I'd mention it. So you're smoothing over a reaction before it fully appears. You're buffering discomfort so the moment doesn't escalate. And again, that's labor. So if you're listening to these examples and thinking, that's just being considerate, well, you're not wrong. The issue isn't that you just do these things sometimes. The issue is when you do them constantly with the same people and you leave feeling drained and foggy. That's when emotional labor becomes an energy leak. So let's talk about energy leaks. That's when most people say, I just don't know why I'm so tired. So the energy leaks happen when you suppress your real reaction, you over-explain instead of being direct, you stay emotionally alert the whole time, and you don't feel safe being neutral. You're leaking energy not because the person is loud or dramatic, but because you can't rest inside yourself. And that's a key clue. Now, not every draining person is manipulative, but some dynamics pull more out of you than you get back. And these are subtle, not explosive. Let me give you a few examples of subtle manipulation dynamics. First, or number 1, there are guilt-based responses. This is when your needs are met with emotional weight instead of dialogue. So you say something like, I don't think I can come this weekend. And they say, oh, okay, I guess I'll just be here by myself then. Nothing aggressive was said, but something was implied. And what happens inside you is, now I feel bad. Maybe I should arrange things. I don't want to hurt them. So you're no longer deciding freely, you're responding to guilt. And that's a drain. And number 2, needing constant reassurance. This is when your presence becomes proof of their worth. They say, are you mad at me? You're sure we're okay? You don't hate me, right? Even when nothing happened. And you say, no, we're fine, everything's fine. Over time you learn, if I'm neutral, they get anxious. If I'm quiet, they need reassurance. So you stay emotionally on even when you're tired. And so that vigilance costs energy. And number 3, when they're shifting responsibility onto you, this one is subtle and powerful. You say something like, I felt hurt when that happened. And they say, I wouldn't have done that if you'd explained yourself better. So now your feeling has been redirected, reinterpreted, and reassigned. Instead of addressing what happened, you're now defending how you communicated. The emotional labor quietly shifts to you. And number 4, reacting badly when you pull back. This happens when you reduce availability. You say, I'm going to take a quiet night tonight. And they say, wow, okay, guess I'll stop bothering you. Or, you've changed. Now your self-care has created tension. And what you learn over time is that pulling back causes friction. Staying available keeps things smooth. So you override yourself, not because you want to, but because it's easier. That's an energy leak. And number 5, framing your boundaries as hurtful. So this is when an emotional reversal happens. You say calmly and reasonably, "I'm not comfortable talking about this right now." And they respond with, "Wow, that really hurts. I thought we were closer than that." And so what just happened is your boundary wasn't debated. It was reframed as rejection. So now the issue is no longer your comfort. It's their hurt feelings. And number 2 is about character judgment. So you say, "I don't want to do that." And they say, "I guess I just expected more openness from you." So now your boundary is positioned as withholding, lack of trust, and a personal failing. So instead of holding your line, you feel pressure to prove you're not selfish or cold. And number 3 is about emotional debt. You say, "I need some space tonight." And they respond, "I was really counting on you, but okay." Nothing is shouted, nothing is demanded, but now you're left holding the feeling, "I disappointed them. I should make this up somehow." So that emotional weight turns your boundary into something you feel responsible for. And number 4 is the guilt loop. You say, "I'm not ready to talk about that." And they say, "I just feel shut out when you do that." So notice they didn't ask when you'll be ready. They didn't respect the pause. They made your boundary the source of their pain. So now you're tempted to reopen the conversation, not because you're ready, but because you feel guilty. Now, when a boundary is framed as hurtful, you're subtly trained to associate self-protection with causing pain. And that's why holding boundaries becomes exhausting. And this doesn't mean other people aren't allowed to have feelings. It means their feelings don't automatically override your right to say no. Feeling drained after certain people isn't a mystery. It's information. The question isn't, how do I regulate better around them? It's, why does this relationship require so much regulation in the first place? So emotional regulation isn't about staying calm inside bad dynamics. It's about noticing, why do I have to regulate so much here? Regulation helps you pause before overgiving, noticing the leak instead of explaining it away, leaving earlier rather than later, and stopping blaming yourself for the exhaustion. So regulation doesn't fix the dynamic, it helps you see clearly. So this is also why some draining relationships feel so hard to walk away from. If intensity has ever been tied to connection in the past, your nervous system might be reading exhaustion as engagement. Relief after reconnection doesn't mean it's healthy. It often means the stress cycle paused. We talked more about this on the past follow-up Friday about trauma bonding. But the key idea here is that drain is data or information for you to consider. So here's the reframe I want to leave you with. If you feel drained after someone, ask yourself, what was I carrying that wasn't mine? Not, what's wrong with me, or why can't I handle this better? Energy doesn't disappear. It gets spent somewhere. And so now that brings us to today's journal question, which is, who do I feel most drained around, and what am I doing in those interactions that I don't do elsewhere? Again, who do I feel most drained around, and what am I doing in those interactions that I don't do elsewhere? So thank you for tuning in today, and I hope some of the practical examples were sort of mirroring some things that you saw happening in your relationships, and maybe gave you some ideas of what might be going on and how you might try to approach them differently. Tune in next week when video 7 will be Patterns Don't Lie, How to Recognize Red Flags Without Overthinking. And so if this video helped you name something you couldn't quite put your finger on, you're not alone and you're not broken. So I will see you in the next video. Thanks a lot. Have a great rest of your day, and bye for now.